If you're after a new Snapdragon 8 Elite flagship phone that is very camera orientated and focused with a dedicated camera button, then this model is definitely worth a look. It is the Nubia Z70 Ultra. Its main camera, 35mm, has a variable aperture. It's 50 megapixels, it's got a 50 megapixel ultra wide and a 64 megapixel 70mm zoom camera. It also has optical image stabilization like our main camera. The battery in this phone, very large to power all of this. It's 6,150 milliamp hours, and the screen, it's a flat screen, looks really good because it's got tiny little bezels and also an under display camera, which is 16 megapixels. And with those pixels over the camera enabled, you don't even realize that there is a selfie camera there. It's a very clean looking phone. So we have a charger here that can charge the phone at 80 watts, and I'll give you the exact charge time later in the review. The cable, Type-C to Type-C, and here is the phone. So I have the Starry Night version. You can see that it's very unique, and it has this 3D effect to it, which is quite nice, and it's a matte finish. Now, this here in direct sunlight does stand out quite a bit. So if you want a phone that looks very different, I mean, the camera modules look different, but this here, back of it, does kind of stand out. It's not for me. I find it a little bit too busy. I would just prefer one of their plain colors, which of course you can get. So we have a metal frame around the outside. The power button here has a texture to it, so it's very easy to distinguish this from the volume rocker, and I absolutely love this. Finally, someone has done here a camera button, well, with the newer phones that is, that works properly. So dual stage, you can just press down a little to focus, and then the further you press down, of course, at the final second stage, it will take the photo. Now, this implementation is so much better than Apple. Look at the location. That is, in fact, pretty good. You can get to it very easily, all right? You can start to take photos with it, and you can also flick the phone into the camera mode using the switch, and I can take a few photos using that, so you can get that focus, take the photo. Now, the Apple idea of doing this is ridiculous. I mean, look at the position of this. I've just found this to be so annoying. It's far too in the middle. It's towards the middle. It should be about, well, where they have it. Should really be about here. And the sensitivity of this with the touch zoom and everything, I don't like. I don't use it. Bad implementation. But Nubia here has done a very good job with that. And even Oppo with the Find X8 Pro, I find that they went the path of Apple, that it's a touch one, capacitive, a little too sensitive sometimes, and it's too far in, so it's not as comfortable to use as the Z70 Ultra. So well done, Nubia. They did an excellent job with that. So that switch on the side to flick it into the dedicated camera mode if you want is right here. Again, it's got a little bit of a texture to it. Metal frame around the outside that is pretty much exactly like the Red Magic 10 Pro or the 9S Pro frame around it, and I like it. It's all squared off, painted here, antenna lines, loudspeaker, it is dual. The SIM tray takes 2 nano SIMs, and yes, we have video out with this, and that is great to see. At the top, IR transmitter, microphone, more antenna lines. So it is 8.6 millimeters the thickness, and the weight is 228 grams. So our screen here is 6.85 inches. It's Full HD plus the resolution, not quite Quad HD. So the resolution is 1216 by 2688. OLED, 144 hertz. It is very, very fast, this screen. And I like the fact that it's flat. I love the slim bezels and the under display camera. I'm someone that doesn't take a lot of selfies, so I'm not too worried about the downgrade we get from the selfie camera because I wouldn't really be using that much. Now, in terms of our refresh rate, I've got it currently at 120 hertz, but there's the 144. The higher you go, of course, the more of an impact it's going to have on the battery life. So it's just like the Red Magic gaming phones. It's basically, I think it is the exact same screen as the, could be wrong here, but the Red Magic 10 Pro, I believe it's exactly the same. Very good screen. So we have an auto refresh rate. Now I love the fact they give us 90 hertz. This option, being OLED, the blacks look deep, the colors are uniformed, and you can see in direct sunlight, it does hold up really well. So it's a fantastic display. I am very fond of it. Now, the good news is when you first power on the phone, very little bloatware. They've just doubled up on a couple of apps like Chrome in their own browser, but we don't get Booking.com, TikTok, Facebook pre-installed, none of that. Excellent, Nubia. Please keep doing that. So we have a widevine level 1 cert, which is great. However, as you'll see later, Netflix is still not recognizing this just yet, but this will change in time. Netflix will give us full HD and hopefully HDR2 as well, which the screen does support. So if you want to use Gcam ports, open camera, you can. We have a level 3 cert here with the camera API and then Antutu. Very good score, over 2.5 million now. That's very high. Thermals did creep up there. 14 degrees is what it increased running this very demanding test here, and I lost 10% battery just from that. So it's a powerful chipset, as you can see with the Geekbench 6 score. Now you can, if you want to, run these tests on your own phone to see what kind of performance difference you are looking at. This is our AI score for those interested, Geekbench AI. Of course, we have AI capabilities with this phone here and this chipset, our Snapdragon 8 Elite. Now the stress test here, did it throttle? It did, but for this chipset, and this is a very good result, it didn't throttle that much. So just over 15% is an excellent result. But yes, there is a trade-off that it gets very, very hot. I measured the frame getting up to 54 degrees Celsius. Internally, it got up to 55 degrees. So it will push that performance, but it will get hot. And I'll talk a little bit more about that with the gaming test too as well with this. Internal storage is UFS 4.0 spec. You can see here these scores. Pause the video if you want to read all of those details. Very quick, absolutely no bottlenecks with this chipset or the storage. It is top end. So is battery life. So we've got a 6,150 milliamp hour battery. That is a very good capacity here. Much better than what you find in a lot of previous gen flagships and even current gen now. So very good result. And this was set to 144 Hertz, the refresh rate. Sorry, 120 Hertz. So great battery life on this. Standby battery drain is looking good. It's better than the MediaTek 9400s, which are efficient chips, but the standby battery drain seems to be a little bit worse on those in my experience. Charge time, excellent. Only 35 minutes to go from 16% to 100 with the 80-watt charging. For such a large battery, I think that is still a really good time there. And this is what I talked about before. Netflix, within the app, you can get the playback spec here, and it tells me standard definition only and no HDR. This will change in time because you've got the level 1 cert. It's just a matter of Netflix updating their support for this phone. It's just a little too new. Moving on to the audio now. We don't have a 3.5mm headphone jack. If you want that, then you need to get one of the Red Magic phones, which do still have that on gaming phones, but it's just not present here, which is unfortunate. So we do have loudspeaker here and then out the earpiece. I find these speakers, the volume is good, they are loud. However, as you'll hear from the sample, they're quite flat. They really do lack bass. So they're about a 6.5 out of 10, these speakers. Over to our video performance. First up with the cameras with our Nubia Z70 Ultra. So it's 1080p, 30 frames per second, and it unfortunately does not seem to have any electronic image stabilization here. Now it is an under display camera, so it's looking through and around the pixels, so the quality is not going to be as good as a traditional front-facing camera. And without that electronic image stabilization, a little shaky as you can see here. So with the sun behind me, now you're noticing definitely the UDC, the under display camera. When I'm in the sun, not quite as bad and okay, but it's just 1080p 30 frames per second we get, no 4K. This is the rear camera now, so 4K 30 frames per second with our ultra wide. The main camera can do 4K up to 120 frames per second. And applying now some zoom, I'll take it up to 1 times. And does it swap over camera? Yes, it does. And I'll just pull it back to the 1 times again. It's gone back to the ultra wide. It's a little fiddly this. There we go. That is now 1 times. So optical and electronic image stabilization with that 35mm main camera. And now I'll apply some zoom. We'll look at the Torre de Hierro, which is that tower in the distance. And we'll see that when we zoom in, we should see the transition. There we go. Over now to our optical zoom camera. So this is now 4 times. That's 4 times digital zoom, looking at that tower there in the background. And I'll take it up now to 5 times. It's 5.1 at the moment, and now 5. Very steady, the camera. It's a good stabilization, which is both optical and electronic. Now over to our stills. So the under display camera selfies, I don't really like them. They are 16 megapixel shots, but they look a little bit artificial. Now this is a portrait 35mm. There is some skin softening because I had the beautifying option on level 2 by accident. So bright flowers in direct sunlight, this is well overblown, it's oversaturated, didn't handle that too well. Indoors shots, 35mm main camera look all right. There's a little bit of noise to them. This is the ultra wide here on the back. Then I go over to our main camera and then 85mm shot, which also looks fine. And then I zoomed into a lot more. This is at 5 times zoom. And you can see that's very digital there and not looking so good. So that was mixed results there. Night shots, however, are a lot better. I do like what I'm seeing here. This is the main camera that I'm showing you now, 35mm. I like the background blur that we do get with this. And the night shots did seem to come out reasonably good. In fact, quite good, most of them here. Now this is, again, the 35mm. I used the zoom camera and not so good. So we've got some artifacts, some noise coming into this too. The best way to summarize these cameras is they're good, they have potential, but certainly a lot of optimization is needed from Nubia with these cameras, I feel. Gaming performance with our Snapdragon 8 Elite is very good, and if you swipe from the left, and I have it actually set for the switch here to go into the game space mode, and you can set the governor for the CPU here to what is called Rise, and this is the same as what we see with the Red Magic gaming phones. So it's going to put it into the absolute top performance. So Genshin Impact with this chipset, with the 6GB of RAM, this is pretty straightforward, right? That you know it's going to run well, and it does. It's very, very good. The only trade-off is that I've noticed that the phone will get very, very hot. As I mentioned, it got up to 54 degrees Celsius around the frame here. So that Snapdragon 8 Elite, to me, seems like a hot chip. Now, if you want even better performance, more consistent frame rates, even though this is very good, and it probably won't get as hot, then the Red Magic 10 Pro is probably the phone to go for if you want the Snapdragon 8 Elite, that is. The heat around here, but I notice it more on the frame, but exceptionally good gaming performance. It's very, very good. So I love the build quality of this phone. The fact that it's squared off, the metal frame feels very nice in hand, and that flat screen with no ugly cutout or notch. It looks fantastic with those tiny slim bezels, fares well in direct sunlight and 144 Hz. It's incredibly quick and responsive. The UI is very fast. It seems well optimized now after we've had a few firmware updates already since I got my hands on this phone. Now the battery life, very good. Thanks to the 6150 milliamp hour battery. It can go for about 2 days for most people and will last, as you saw in my test, up to 9 hours with that fixed looping benchmark. Was very good. The result, 444 Hz. I really did not expect that. Charges fully in only around 35 to 40 minutes, which is excellent. And that 35mm camera. I love that focal length for portraits and just for getting a little bit closer. For street photography stuff, I think it's really good. Low light performance has been excellent from what I've seen, and it's got the variable aperture, giving it quite a bit more flexibility than not having that set up there at all. So what are we missing? No 3.5mm headphone jack, no cooling fan in this because that of course is in the Red Magic gaming phones. But if you like those Red Magic gaming phones and you always wanted, say, a 2-stage camera button or better rear cameras, this phone has it. The other cons that I noticed are that it's going to get hot, the frame, when you game. Nubia pushed that performance so much, they pushed the thermals quite a bit, that it will heat up a little right there. And finally, fingerprint reader has been sometimes a little hit and miss. It sometimes doesn't want to work for me, although it seems to be working all right. It'll be 9 out of 10 times it'll work. So I hope with a firmware update they can improve upon that Nubia. So that is the Nubia Z70 Ultra. Thank you so much for watching this review.